Okay, awesome. So we'll get started. So welcome everybody today to our second webinar in our series. Just to get started, make sure that you're in the chat and change your settings to all panelists and attendees so you can ask questions during this webinar and so that everybody else that's joining can see anything that you're asking. We also have our other developer advocate, Meredith Hassett, who actually did our webinar last week, introducing Corvid to you all with our talk and webinar for Corvid, your full stack utility belt. So last week we covered our introduction to Corvid. We dove into a lot of its core features and we got to see a lot of its power. But today we're going to dive in a little bit more specific on some features here. And we're going to learn how to harness the full power of Wix data using Corvid, right? So, my name is Joshua Alphonse. I'm a full stack developer. I started out as a backend developer by trade. I'm also a music producer. I love music and technology. And I'm a developer advocate for Corvid by Wix here in New York. You can follow me on Twitter. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or even send me an email. So as I mentioned before, our other developer advocate, Meredith Hassett, actually did the webinar for last week for Corvid, your full stack utility belt. And Meredith, if you'd like to come back and reintroduce yourself for anyone that may not have met you from last week.
Thanks, Joshua. Hi, all. If you didn't meet me last week at our Introduction to Corvid webinar, my name is Meredith Hassett. I am a front-end developer by trade, and I love building integrations into those front ends. I am also a developer advocate for Corvid at Wix, and I am located in San Francisco Bay Area. These are my LinkedIn and Twitter, so feel free to reach out to me too, and I will be answering your questions in the chat, so make sure you're on everybody so I can answer those for the whole group.
Thanks, Meredith. And yeah, everybody feel free to reach out during this webinar, ask some questions. Meredith is going to be in there and engaging with you all. And then we'll also have some time afterwards to answer some questions that might not have got answered on the way, just because, you know, there's a lot of people here. So without further ado, we'll move forward. So today we're going to cover a lot of different things, a lot of tools that you're going to find very useful in your journey when you're using Corvid, right? So we want to learn how to set up our website to handle dynamic content, right? So we're enhancing the way that we actually build websites with Wix by using some added platforms like Corvid and Wix Data. So today we're going to cover how to create integrated databases and the benefit behind them. We're going to also learn how to connect elements to data. So all those different UI elements that you love dragging and dropping on the page, we'll learn how to actually connect those to our data collections so that we can render our data that we store. We'll also see how to join databases together. So if there's any relevant information from one database to another, we can actually join that information together, just like a relational database. We're also going to dive in to learn how to create dynamic pages and the benefit behind them, how it's easy to scale and build dynamic templates with dynamic content very easily when you're using Corvid by Wix. And also, we're going to see some more complexity. Wix Data API is a great API for you to query through your different data collections and have some more customization to how you want to present your data on your page. And then, like I mentioned before, we're going to have some time again for questions and answers, but also still feel free to ask any questions inside the chat and Meredith will be there to answer for you. So unified database management, right? So a lot of the times when we're building web applications, we're using data from other sources that are outside of our environment that we're working on from our front end, right? So we'll have to go somewhere else, maybe even code on a different language, or even have to make an API that we have to go and fetch to just to get our data that we have, right? But unified database management makes it so much easier, and it's a seamless process because you don't have to leave your environment to get the data that you already created, and the access is right there with a click of a button. So Corvid by Wix has a lot of these core features to make sure that developers can easily access all their tools. So just how we mentioned last week, our full stack utility belt. These are one of our main tools that we'll be using. So again, integrated databases. Organize and manage your site's data using the built-in interface. So instead of looking at terminal or even just some code on your text editor, you'll be able to see everything on this beautifully displayed interface here for you to go through all your data, add your data, and change the data types. You can set up and build as many collections as you need to store your data inside your website. You can choose how and where to use the data on your site. So if you want to have any type of permissions where you want admins to only see the content, or maybe even just members, you can set that up easily through the menus in the dashboard for our content manager. Wix Data has a bunch of field types that you can use. So if you have data where it's either text, an integer, an image, even the address, or even audio, you can actually change the field type for each entry you have inside your table and adjust them to whatever UI element you want to connect them to. So those are a lot of the important field types that you'll see when you're building with Corvid by Wix and using Wix Data. Those are probably the most frequent ones that you'll come across on any development platform. So we're also gonna, again, dive into how to connect data to UI components. So there's many UI components that you've seen on your journey from using Wix, from repeaters, galleries, even text and images, right? So when we have data that's stored inside of our collections, we want to be able to display it on a page and not have to just singularly add an image to a repeater and each item in there. Now we can actually dynamically render our data through our UI elements from our data collections and datasets. And segue into datasets. So datasets are a way for us to actually organize our data that we want to display on the page, right? So we have our data collection, but then we also have our data set to help connect it to our collection, and then choose what UI element we want to connect it to. And then on top of that, it gives us access to a menu that we can easily sort and filter our data the way we want to without using any code. And that's the benefit of using Wix Data, right? We're able to display a lot of the things that we love and a lot of things that we're storing without having to code at all. And on top of that, even if you do want to add some custom complexity to your website, you can still use our Wix Data API. And we're going to dive in a little deeper later on how to use that. So let's move on to our next step here. We're going to go back to our Adopt a Bird website that we made from last week. And we're going to go inside these specific features of how to use Wix Data with Corvid. So I'm just going to slide over here to the next page. So here we are, back again at the Adopt a Bird website. So remember, when you want to use Corvid by Wix, you have to enable dev mode. So you go right here at the top of the page and you go to turn on dev mode. At the moment it's on, so you can turn it on or off. And if we look at the site structure pane on the left side, we'll see that we have our pages here. Something here might look a little different, which is our dynamic pages that we'll dive into later on. And then if we go down here to our database dropdown, this is where we'll start and how to create our databases and use the integrated database interface to easily make our websites dynamic. All right. So I'll show you how to get started here. We have our database and we can go to add. So when you're using Corvid by Wix and Wix Data, you're able to create your own collection inside of our interface. And then you can also access any external collections that you have elsewhere. So if you have any type of databases stored in Google Cloud, we actually have an adapter for the MySQL Cloud there, and that you can actually connect your endpoint and put in your credentials. So all you have to simply do is go here to add external collections, create the name for your collection, add the endpoint or the URL for wherever that database is stored, and then also put in your credentials, like your API key. And then the table that you create will start to populate with the data that you're connecting it to. So if I go over here to add a new collection, and remember we're doing this Adopt a Birds project, let's create a new collection called Species. right? So if you see here, we already started creating our collection, and this field here started to populate. Set a collection ID to use in your code. So again, Wix Data, you don't have to use any code, but if you want to add some more complexity to it, you could use the Wix Data API. And this is the ID that you'll use to pinpoint the collection that you're speaking of. So in this case, we're creating this new collection for species. And then we have another field here, a dropdown, for what's this collection for? At the moment right now, we have it set to site content. But if you want to set different permissions or even set what kind of databases is going to be, you can change it here. So we have it as site content. You have it set up for form submissions, all right? If I want to change my permissions to site members only, or even just for my admins to see, I can do that all here easily without adding any code at all. So we're going to keep it here at site content just to get started. All right. So we're going to create the collection here with a click of a button, and it's going to start to create it. Awesome. So you'll see that this interface starts to pop up, and this is our content manager. All right. So our species collection here now we can add a whole bunch of different things, from our name of our species here. Let's say I said Corvid, because that's one of our favorite birds. You can add new fields like images, text, a Boolean, a number, date and time, reference fields for joins, and then also even addresses. There's so many different data types that you'll use that you'll find useful. All right. So it's very easy just to get started using a collection. You can add your fields here using this add button, change your field name. If I want to add this field name to image, and you'll see that this field key is here, and that's what we'll use in our code if you want to talk about this field. And you can change the field type to image. I can still go here if I create an image field, I can go here and add a new image either from Wix itself, from the media from Wix, or I can upload my own content very easily. All right. So when you're creating these collections, you have sandbox mode and you also have a live mode. So our sandbox mode is what we're going to be viewing inside of our preview mode, and our live mode is going to be what our users are going to see on our live site when we publish. You just have to make sure that you sync these when you're testing, if that's the case, if that's what you want to do. And also, here's some other features here for this. If you have your data stored inside of a CSV file, you can import your items here. And if you want to export your collections as a CSV, you just simply go to export. Great. So we're going to leave this collection here, shows you how to get started. But now we're going to dive in a little more and learn about some other features that we love. Cool. So again, we're here at the Adopt a Bird website. We remember a lot of different things. We have our birds that we stored inside of a repeater. You even see here, we have some data sets that we'll start to see later on. But we have a repeater here with all of our birds, and we'll go into preview mode, we'll check it out. So all these birds are actually stored inside of our data collection. And our repeater is connected to a data set that's connected to the collection and allows us to see all this dynamic content on the page. So as we add more birds to our collection, you'll see them start to populate this repeater. All right, so if I go back to the editor, all right, and I go here to birds, I can see inside my content manager. We'll just publish my site, just press that by accident. So if I go here to my content manager, I'll see all the birds that were there in that repeater, right? So everything is dynamic. Great. So what we'll do now is we'll actually go and create a dynamic page. So our dynamic pages are great because it allows you to create dynamic templates for all your data, just similar to how we saw on each bird's dynamic page from the last demo. So we're gonna make dynamic pages really easily for our adopters. So I have this adopters collection, and I go here to the settings cog. Remember, this doesn't require any code at all. If I had to do this somewhere else to create dynamic pages, I would have to go and copy different files and maybe paste some different code somewhere. Here, it's just easy, and I can add a dynamic page because it knows the data collection that I'm speaking of. So go here and add a dynamic page, and it starts to create our pages for us. So notice how the screen is starting to populate with different information. Cool. And let it do its magic. Awesome. So now we have our dynamic page set up for our adopters, right? So if I go over here to preview mode, you'll start to see this repeater start to pop up. These are all the people that I have stored inside of my adopters page. So there's everyone that's come through the page and has seen a bird and said, this is what I want. And they put in their information from their name to their email and their image as well. So if we go back to the editor, when you create a dynamic page, it comes with a few things. It comes with a repeater that we have highlighted here, already tailor-made for what you have stored in your collection. It also comes with a data set. And this dynamic data set here allows us to do a lot of different things. So if I go here to settings on our data set that comes with this dynamic page, you'll see that it connects to the collection for adopters. You can name the connector. You can also change the mode from read-only, read and write. And if this is not a dynamic page, you can set it for read-only, write-only, and read and write. But because this is a dynamic page and we're displaying our data, there's no need to write it. So now I have this all populated here, created this dynamic page really easily. I can still come in here and design how I'd like, no matter what. If I want to manage my content for what I have stored inside this data collection, inside this dynamic page, I just go here to my data collection through the Manage Content button, and I can see the collection that I'm working with here. Great. So now we have a lot of different things that we just went through. We've seen our dynamic pages. We saw how to create a data collection and even use a data set. But let's learn how to connect our dynamic data sets to our UI elements. So now when you create a dynamic page, you'll see that on the site structure pane, you have adopters all and adopters name. So now our all page is showing all of our adopters. And then our adopter's name is going to be showing individual adopters. So their dynamic page and how it's templated. So similar to how when we were adopting the birds last week, we were able to see the bird's individual page and we were able to donate to the bird and also adopt each singular bird. It's the same instance here from when we're using the dynamic pages for each of the adopters. So now we have Adams here. We can go and scroll through all of them. James, everybody's here. So if I go back to the editor, let's make a few changes here. All right, so now we have all this content here from the image to the dynamic data set, and we want to be able to have our birds be in connection with who our adopters are. So if I go here to our birds collection, you also see here that we have our birds, our adopter, everything here is populated. If I go over here to our adopters collection, let's go back and we'll start to do a database drawing here. All right, so again, we went through a lot of our different data types that we have that we can choose from, but now we're gonna go and see something that's a little bit more unique. So if I wanna name this field, let's say adopters, actually birds, and I go here to reference, that's how we're going to connect this, these two databases that we have from our adopters and our birds to one another. So if I have a dynamic page for an individual that has adopted a bird and I want to show that bird's information, I can do that. So if I go here to reference collection and I find the collection that I have from our adopters to maybe our billing, but in this case, we want to see our birds. So if I go here to birds and I press save, great. All of our birds collections are here. So now if I go over here to this field, I'll be able to actually choose what bird belongs to who in our database. So I know Nicole belongs to Joshua, Vlad belongs to Adam, and so forth. You can keep going through each one of these birds here and populating your database. Right? And you can also set up some custom functions as well. so that you can have these all populated. So if I go here and keep adding some more in, let's see, and we'll end it here with Cindy, right? So now this database is now enjoined with the birds database, right? And that automatically saves. So now we're on James's page. And let's learn how to connect UI elements to different database, to our collection. So if I go here to add, and I go to a listing grid, and we'll start with our repeater. You can go and choose through a bunch of different repeaters here. And even if you want to go and connect your database collection to other UI elements like images, a gallery, even something inside of a button, or even some text, you can do that by going through here and finding out what UI elements connect. And depending on their data types, that's what's going to be able to display. So the repeaters are great because they come already packed with a lot of different UI elements for you to choose and pinpoint what fields you want to populate those areas. So let's go down here to this collection. Let's just drag in this one. I like this one here. And we can move this to the bottom of our page. So you guys might be familiar with your repeaters already. So you know that probably if you haven't used Corvid before, you can just go and pick each one of these parts of the repeater and change the image. But that's a lot, that takes a lot of time. And we want to be able to do things dynamically, right? So the way that Wix Data works is we have our UI elements here. And because we're on this dynamic page, our data set's already here, ready to go. And if we weren't on this dynamic page and we didn't see this data set, you can actually go over here to your content manager and go to add content elements. And you can actually find your data set, or you can actually go here to your content manager over here and do so as well. So if I go down to my repeater, I can change my layout to make things a little bit cleaner, change it to my center, and then also manage my items because I only want to show one bird. So let's delete some of these items from here. And as you go through, when you click your repeater, you see these menus pop up, and you notice probably something a little different once you turn on dev mode. This is the connect to data button. And this is crucial here because this allows us to connect our data points to all of our UI elements inside this repeater without using any code at all. So if I go here to choose a connector and I choose to adopt our item, that's the name of this data set that's here at the top of our page. I can go and select the image. And so now it's selected a specific UI element inside the repeater. So if I go here back to my connections, you'll see that like the text is here. I can go and change what field inside my data collection connects to the text. Let's start with the image though. So if we go to image source connects to, I'm able to see all the fields that are available depending on the data type to connect this image to. So if I wanted to connect this image to the items of the images of all the adopters, I could do that again here, but we already have that set for our image above, right? But I want to be able to show our bird depending on our adopter. And remember, we just did a whole database join. So now because we did that join, we have access to that other table and its fields as well. And that's the beauty of database joins. It makes things more relational. So I can go here to image. Image source connects to. We'll see here, this is the image for the adopters database. And then you'll see here an idle, birds in parentheses here. Image is highlighted because this is a field that, that actually complies with the data set, with the data type. So if we go here to image, I selected that. And if I want to change like alt text or anything else as well, I can go change that. And I can still go inside of my repeater and still specifically pick what points I want here. So if I want to just change the text and change that data set instead of going through that whole menu for all collections, I can actually go here and change the name here because this is a text field. I can change the placeholder if I want, but it automatically does that for me. I can go here and let's choose the date of the adoption. And I can still change the format of how I want this data to be displayed. So let's choose short. Actually, let's choose long date here. So now if I go through my menu, and let's go start with Josh, that's me. If I go over to my dynamic page and I click preview, I'm able to see my image that's here, and then also the image of the bird that I adopted. In this case, I adopted Nicole the flying squirrel. And if I go further into my page and I see what Adam also had, I can go inside of his page and see that he adopted this bird. So we're joining these databases together so we can see our data populate in different areas because they're relevant to one another. And that's really easy. You don't have to go through SQL and actually do any type of joins. It's very simple, and you're working through the content manager to do so. The interface is beautiful, and it makes it a very seamless process for you to actually display the dynamic content that you have already stored in your website. So now this requires no code at all, but we're gonna go now a little deeper into learning about how to use the Wix Data API, and then also how to add some complexity to how we want our data to be displayed. So last week, Meredith actually showed you a bit about how Wix Data was going to work. Now we're gonna show you a little bit more in depth about how we're doing that. So if I go over here to my locations page, this is a dynamic page, and I actually created a database beforehand, a data collection beforehand called locations with all my different locations of where I find my birds from. So if I see Pearl, her species over here is the puffins tag. I also have her here as a reference. Vlad is referenced in Japan. So I'm joining these tables together to change my data. So let's go over here to our locations page, our locations.all. Right. So let me preview to you what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be going through. Awesome. Great. So now we have this repeater here that's already filled with our data collection. All right. And we're going to do a few different things. We're going to learn how to use the Wix Data API. So let me just get this strip here. Let me just lower the strip here. And I'll show you, you can still customize all your pages the way you'd like. Cool. So now we have our Wix Data API. Remember, you can always go to our API reference to view anything that you'd like to see, from code snippets to different functions we have available. So if I go down here to my built-in IDE, that's really easy to access, you'll see that we have import Wix data on our first line. So the Wix Data API gives us the functionality to work with our data collections, our fields, and we can query different information we want our users to interact with and see. So I have this Wix Data API imported into my code, and make sure you do it at the top of your code. And I created two variables here, just to make things a little bit more clean and concise. So we have a variable here for our collections name. And in this case, our collections name is locations. We also have the field to filter by in the collection. So we want to filter by the tags field. So if you saw inside of our locations database here, in our locations database or data collection, we'll see that I have another field here for species tags. And that's just another field type that you can actually add here in terms of tags. And it makes it easy for us to work with a certain UI element called selecting tags. So I can easily add these selection tags from our menu here and add, and go to input. If you go here to input and you go here to selection tags, you can go and change it. Add these in and design it and change it the way you'd like. Great. So that being said, that's just how we're going to be filtering our data and sorting it here using the Wix Data API. So now inside of our $W onReady function, which is the function that allows us to put other functionalities inside of there, so when our page loads, it runs those, we have a few different things. I'm calling a function here that I created called load data to repeater. And then I also am using an onChange event here to actually bring in the values of how I'm changing this selection tag. So you see here I have $W tags. That's the name that I actually gave this UI element by right-clicking, view properties, and then you see this properties pane pop up. You can change the ID. There's a lot of different functions that you can add here without having any code involved, from hiding things on load to collapsing on load. And then you can also easily add export events and functions straight from this menu here without having to type them. Cool. So now let's look at our load data to repeater function that we have here. So we created this function using JavaScript. And we also have this function, and our parameter that's here is an empty array for our selected categories. So our selected categories here are what we have in our selection tags, from the puffins, the ducks, the owls, ostrich, all the different species that we have stored in our collection. All right. So now we're going to see here we have another variable for the data query. So we're saying let data query equal to Wix data.query locations. So we're saying this variable that we're going to be calling later on in our code, we're going to equal it to this specific collection, which is the location collection that we have on our site structure pane. You can also add some conditional logic. So we're saying if the selected category happens to have no items there, I want you to be able to go through and return a promise here that says data query that has all, and it's going through each item inside of our data collection and seeing what we're clicking in terms of our selection tags. Cool. Awesome. So now if I go here to our find function that we have at the bottom here, we have .find and then .then results here for our promise that we're returning here. And we're saying if the, we're making a variable here for our items to be ready on load for our repeater. So we're saying results.items, which are results that we're getting from after our promise here. And then we have another variable for if our repeater is empty. And if our repeater is empty, we can go here and then also create some conditional logic to show some text on our screen if there's no results. So let's go over here to our add button, and we're going to add a text here. Let's add a title that says no results. So we have this big title here, and we go to our view properties. And then you already see here that I have inside of this if statement here that we have no results found. So let's go and put this name of our UI element for no results found. If I go here in my code, you see the errors are gone. And I can also do a few things. Let's go and change what the text looks like. So I go no results, change the sizing, right? And then I like to go here and click hidden on load, right? So we don't want to see this text when we go and load our page or anything like that. We want it to show only when this function that we have with our conditional logic inside of it says, hey, there's actually nothing that's correlating with multiple tags that you selected, right? So let's go into preview mode and check it out. So just make sure autosave is on, but I always make sure that I save my work. And we'll click preview mode. So you see here we don't see the no results text because we were hiding it on load. And we have the list of all of our different locations here for where our birds are from. So if I go here to puffin, I'll see the only places where I can find my puffin: South Korea and the North Pole. If I want to see maybe an owl and an ostrich that might be from the same spot or the same location, we'll see here that we created that conditional logic to show there's no results for the items that we're looking for, right? So the Wix Data API is very powerful. It allows you to do a lot of different functions with your data collections that you have here if you want to add some more functionality. So we just learned how to use a lot of different things, from no code to low code solutions, and then also getting a bit more complex, right? So the world is yours when you're using Wix Data. There's a lot of different functions you can add. These are just some other things that we use to filter through. There's also some familiar functions that you might see when using JavaScript, like .find, .contains. So we don't want to make the developers feel as if they can't use the JavaScript that they used to. Come here and use it. Cool. So remember, we have our dynamic pages that we just went through. And we also have our Wix Data API. So the Wix Data API, like we just saw, gives us the functionality for working with data collections. It can be used for your site's front end and your back end code as well. So if you have any back end functions that are going through your collections and you want to be able to create that business logic, you can do so inside your back end. You can build queries and also insert data into your collection using code. Right? So even if you have like an API from somewhere, you want to import this information into your data collection, you can use insert functions to do so. You can filter, and the world is yours. Filter and sort. Make sure that you import the Wix Data API at the top of your code to get started. Remember that we have a Corvid API reference for you to go through. So there's many examples and code snippets for you to see, and it's extensive and it shows a lot of information and tells you how you can get started with a lot of our APIs and the functions behind it. From the APIs to the UI elements, it will tell you all the things that you have available. And some more features that we might not have covered today in our shorter session that you should definitely take a chance to look at in our resources that we'll provide after this webinar. We spoke briefly about connecting to an external database using like MySQL, using the Corvid adapters, and then also using your endpoints and your credentials that you have. You can also export your data collections, just how we saw earlier with your CSV files. Sync your database's sandbox version to your live version, so you're always up to date with the data that you have inside your collections. And then you have the ability to work with dynamic data sets, just like we saw. So definitely take a dive deeper into how you could use this API and then also just the content manager to easily add the dynamic content that you want to your page. All right, bring your site to life and keep it fresh with all the newest content that you're adding to your data collections. It's a pain just going and changing each individual thing inside of a UI element that you have, but now you know and you have the power and the knowledge to go use the Wix Data API, the content manager, and all those to make these dynamic websites that you would love to make. So today, we covered a lot of different things. We covered integrated databases. We learned how to connect elements to data. We learned about referencing and connecting and joining our databases together, like the birds and the locations, and the birds and the adopters as well. We created dynamic pages for our adopters so that if anyone's going on the site, we can see each adopter's profile page there and see who they adopted. And then we also use the Wix Data API to add some more complexity to how we work with our database collections. So now I know that Meredith has been in the chat and she's been answering some questions, but I'll also take some time to answer some questions as well. Let me go and change over here to panelists and attendees. And we have a question here. So do we have any questions? You can definitely come and ask. And just to pinpoint as well, a lot of you here are working with different agencies. And just remember that in the last 7 days, 1,000 users submitted project requests for web development in the Wix marketplace. It's a lot of requests and a lot of places and a lot of opportunities for you to get involved in our Wix community. So last week you learned about using Corvid as your full stack utility belt. Today we just learned about how to harness the power of Wix data. So now you can take these skills that you learned in these last 2 sessions and even some knowledge that you have maybe from elsewhere to use it to join our marketplace and get your work out there. Said we did have a question earlier about the difference between dynamic data sets and the regular ones. Cool, so the dynamic data sets automatically get created on your, once you create a dynamic page, right? So if you look at our API reference as well, you'll see that we have a few different things here from our Wix data and our Wix data set. So I'll actually go over here to our API reference and I'll actually share the screen there and I'll show you how you can access that. Great. Let me just adjust real quick. Move this page over here. Great. So we have our API reference here for Corvid by Wix. And you'll see here inside our Wix data pane, we have Wix data and Wix data set. All right. So the data set connects page elements to the set of items in our collection. And our dynamic data set connects page elements on a dynamic page to the set of items in a data collection. So if you have a dynamic page, that's the difference between the dynamic data set and what we have as just a regular data set.
Hey, Josh,
they changed in a way in
your
terms of
screen right now?
I'm sorry?
We can't see your screen right now?
Oh, you can? Okay, hold on. It says screen sharing. Let me go back. Thank you. Okay, great. Can you see this now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. So if you look here at our API reference, you'll see that we have our Wix dataset here, and that dataset connects to our page elements that we have. So the difference between the dynamic dataset and the regular dataset is that a dynamic dataset is created on a dynamic page, right? So one of the only differences that are there are the modes that you can select from. So when you have a dynamic dataset, you're actually not able to choose the write-only mode. But when you have a dataset on a different page, you can actually use that dataset to change your different modes elsewhere and connect it to as many different UI elements that you have on your page. Let's see if we have any more questions here. Let's see. Regular data sets. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask? Feel free. You also have me and Meredith here to answer your questions. Great. Cool. So thank you. Awesome. So actually, let's go back to our slides here. So remember, I'm a developer advocate, Joshua Alphonse, here in New York. You can follow me on Twitter, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, you can reach out to Meredith as well. She's our other developer advocate in San Francisco. So definitely feel free to reach out to us. And you can also find us on Reddit at our subreddit, Corvid by Wix. And then if you have any questions about code or anything like that, or if you want to share with our community, you can join us on Stack Overflow using our tag Corvid, right? So again, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, same with Meredith, and reach out to us on these communities. So Reddit's there for us to share with one another, share any cool projects we're making, and also just pick the brains of other developers that are in our corporate community. So thank you very much for coming tonight and learning about how to harness the power of Wix data. So next, in the next webinar that we have on June 10th is actually going to be about integrating third-party services with Corvid, right? So it's a popular thing that a lot of people ask for, and we're going to go and we're going to tackle this, and we're going to learn how to actually integrate your favorite third-party services with Corvid, from using our Fetch API and also using NPM modules, right? So thank you very much all for coming out tonight. Hope to see you next week when we learn about integrating our third-party services, and have a great day.